Okay, modelers, so today we're going to be doing a little bit of weathering on our armour. The techniques I'm going to be showing you in this is mainly for armour weathering. You can use some of these techniques on aircraft and cars and so on like that, but it's just the techniques I mainly use on armour. Now all I've done to prep these two tanks, obviously they're not the right colour or anything like that, this is just to do a demonstration of the techniques we can use. So I've just done it in the dark yellow, Tamiya dark yellow. I've sanded the surface over to get it clean, put a dark yellow coat over it for the Tamiya spray, and then I've just put a satin coat over the top of that to protect it. Now when you're doing weathering, it is important to protect your paint underneath, because if you try and do these weathering techniques straight over the paint and you don't like it, you can't wipe it off or get rid of it, and you can damage the paint underneath. If the fluids that you're using to do the weathering soak into the paint underneath, they can actually damage it, and then you've got to start from scratch, and it's really painful. So I just put down my base coat, whatever colour I'm going to paint the tanks in. It could be camo, it could be whatever it is, but put the base coat down. Then I'll put over a coat to protect that. Now the coats you use, or the ones I use on these ones here, I've used this one here, the Volatile, the satin finish. Okay, so it's not too shiny, it's not too dull, it's sort of in between. I've just used that because I'm trying to use this bottle up. I don't use this a lot, and I figured it'd be good to just use this in this demo. Now the idea is just to protect the paint underneath, and also if you go for a full gloss effect, it's a bit harder to get the weathering effects, some of the weathering effects to stick, because if it's a really shiny surface and you're trying to do streaking effects with a brush, when you run the brush through it a couple of times, it'll just wipe that effect clean off there. So I just put down the satin this time, so some of the weathering will stick to it much better. The other ones I normally use here in Australia, we have this guy here. It's just the original long life shelf floor polishing stuff. Now this is equivalent to the American, this guy here, the Future. Now I got this bottle, oh gee, probably about 5 years ago, maybe longer. I've got that much left in it. This stuff is fantastic, okay? I use it on so many things, but we have got an equivalent here in Australia. The only difference with this stuff here, when it comes out of the bottle, you'll see it when you pour it in the cup, it's milky looking, but don't panic, it dries clear just like the Future does. I don't know why I like the Future more. I don't know, it's just got a better consistency, got a better leveling finish to it, but this stuff is very, very much like it. And I use this just as much as I use the Future these days, because I'm trying to save my Future for the projects I really want. So anyway guys, that's all I've done to prep this. Put the undercoat on, put a protective coat of clear over it, and that's all I've done to these here to get them ready to do our different weathering. Now I'm going to go through quite a few different weathering effects, and I'll break this video up into smaller chunks and upload them either in one big one. Well, I'll upload it in one big one, and then I'll break up in smaller chunks and upload the smaller ones as well. So that way you'll be able to pinpoint which one you want to do. You know, if it's the streaking, if it's the rust chipping or whatever, you'll be able to go to that particular video rather than watching the whole one of this. So anyway guys, I think that's all I've got to say on this matter. If I think of anything else, I'll turn the camera back on, or I'll tell you later on in the process. Okay guys, our next weathering technique that we're going to be doing is a little bit of sponge chipping. Okay, now sponge chipping just involves having a chipping colour, which this colour here is like a fairly dark rusty brown. Now I've got that out of a set. I have a rust set here, which now these, if you can afford to buy one, they're really good. Just get a whole set of different shades of rust colour. The chipping colour should come with that. But if you don't have that, you can buy the chipping colour separate, or you can mix your own with oils. Okay, and it has the same effect. Now all we do to get this effect, we have the chipping colour in the cup there. Now I've already dabbed this piece into it, but I'll just do it again just to show you guys. Okay, now get a fair bit of it off guys, because if you've got too much on there, it's just going to overdo the effect really bad. So dab it around till it's fairly light, and this is normally done on the edges. Okay, so we'll go up along here like so. Okay, now this has got to be a fairly random effect, so sort of go over to the side a little bit like so. Like, don't do it all like heavy or all light. sort of do it darker in some patches than others, like so. Mudguards is a good place to use this effect. Okay, now hopefully you can see that, the camera should focus, and you've got a really nice sort of chipping effect on that front panel there now, if you can see that. Okay, now once that's weathered down, that looks really great, that effect. It's a very good effect. Now you don't have to have it as far down the sides. If I've got it there, I've sort of done that so you can see the effect. It's not normally used on the edges. It's not normally used in the middle of panels, however you can. Well, we've got a little hatch hole there. I'll try and get a little bit around that, but it can be a bit hard to do that. But you can see there, a bit of chipping effect around that, so it looks like that panel's copped a hiding. Okay, so that's our chipping effect with a sponge, and it's a very handy effect to use on armour. Okay, so our next effect we're going to be doing is some damage, like deep scratches, deep gouges into your armour with Rosslyn Streaking. Okay, so what we've done here, we've got the base colour and we've got the satin coat over the top, and all I've done is just use a needle point, like a big thick needle like that, and I've dug some gouges into the back of this here. Okay, now what that does, it gives it depth, it gives it a 3D depth. You can paint these on, but if you can scratch them in there without going overboard, like don't dig into the plastic, it looks much more realistic. Now, because that's actually gone down to the base colour, it's not quite right. So what we're going to do is that same chipping colour we used in the other video, we're going to use in this, just to go along and accent these lines. Okay, it doesn't have to be through the whole scratch sort of thing, so some of it looks lighter, some of it looks darker. Okay, it doesn't have to stay exactly inside the lines. Like so. Now that's really given us some good deep gouges in there. Okay, and that's another effect for armour, something that's been through lots of rocky, rough country and it's been gouging against trees and things like that. That's a good deep gouge effect. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is doing some rust streaks off those. Okay, and I'll turn the camera back on once I'm set up. Okay, modelers, so this time we're going to be looking at doing some streaking effects, rust streaking mainly, and we're going to do it off these gouges that we put in this tank before. Going to do some off there, and I've got another tank hole off to the side here. I'll show you to do some just off, you know, bolt heads and things like that. But we'll start with these guys here. Now you can do this with oils. If you get, you know, just some regular oil paints, I've got some over here. I'll just quickly show you. It's a very old tube, the old Winsor Newton stuff. Now that I've had that for years and years. Very good stuff, and you can get the same effect with this stuff as you can with these types of products. Okay, these are Decay rust streaks, and this one here is streaking grime. So it's like just a dark rust colour, the streaking grime. So what I do, I've got a ball bearing inside these to mix them up nice and well. Give it a quick shake off camera here a little bit for you. Now all you do with these, they're very easy to use, and you just get a brush, like a nice thin brush, dip it in your paint. Now all you're going to do with these is just put like a couple little dabs along wherever these rust marks are, okay, like so. Then I wipe off the excess paint or the excess fluid that's on there and just drag it down just lightly. Okay, so it just leaves a few just marks like so. Now you let that dry, but what I'm going to do to make this look more realistic is I'm going to put the streaking grime beside it. So it's a rust colour as well, but it's much darker, so you're going to have a bit of a variation. Okay, now I'll put it in between where the other colours are. Okay, and one I'm going to mix in there, and I'm going to mix that one in a little bit as well. Take the excess off the brush, take it down, just nice gentle strokes. You don't want too much, like so, and down again like that. Okay, and I'll clean that brush off now. Like I say, we've got to let that dry. So I'll go off camera and I'll let those dry. I'll come back on when they're dry and I'll show you how to actually get those to streak down and look a little bit more subtle. That's just too stark and too rough there at the moment, so we've got to actually make it a little bit more subtle than what it is, but we have to let it dry first. Okay, so I'll put the camera back on when we're ready to go. Okay, and we're back, and our paint is now dry, or our weathering fluids, or whatever you want to call them. They're actually dry. Now these weathering systems that you get, I'll bring up the one we used, these streaking grime and stuff like that from AK, they're actually an oil-based product, so they're not going to hurt the protective coat you put on there. That's the most important thing. If you use an oil-based one, you've got to use water-based over the top. But I do vice versa. I put a water-based protective coat over that base coat, so I can use the oil-based ones and it's not going to hurt that protective base and sink into the paint underneath. So all we've done, like in the first video, we put those streaks on there. Now all I'm going to do is dip a brush into some white spirit. I'll bring it up here to show you. We've just got a bottle of this AK Interactive white spirit, and I've dipped a nice soft brush into it. Now you don't want a brush that's too hard. Now all I'm going to do is take off the excess of that fluid, because if you don't, what happens is it's too strong and it'll just completely take that effect off there. I'll try and get this right into center of focus for you, and you just drag it down, okay, like so. Few times. Now clean off your brush, and again just drag it down like so, okay, and that's it. Now all that is, that just gives you that nice streaking rust effect. Now when that dries off completely, it actually looks much better than what it does at the moment, but that's still not too bad. It gives you an idea of what that does. Now I've done a little bit crooked because of the way I'm sort of sitting here and trying to do this for the camera. I'll try and straighten it up a little bit. I'll probably ruin it by doing it twice, which I sort of have there. Okay, now you can keep going over this. If the effect is too dark, or it's too rich still, you can just go over, give it a couple more drags. Like there's one little one there that looks a little bit too rich for me. I'll just sort of spread that out a little bit. Okay, what you've got to be careful of is not to get it up here, and if you do, I just run my finger over it and it takes it off, because you don't want the rust to be going upwards. I mean, in some circumstances it does look okay upwards. Now this is exactly the same effect that we use off, it can be deep gouges like we've done here, but it also can be used on like bolts and joints and things like that. If I want to put one here, say coming over the side of this, I can put it like a rusted streak coming off that, put a bit of rust up around the top of here, and it's the same thing. You just get that nice little bit of a dull sort of streak coming off that. A lot of the German armour and stuff in World War II, some of the Shermans, they've got some beautiful little areas where you can actually do this effect and it looks really, really nice, okay? But you can overdo it, and to me you can't really underdo it. I mean, if you do it where you can't see it, obviously it's underdone, but a really light effect can be just as dramatic as a fairly heavy effect what we've done here. Now, I've done the heavy effect on this just so that you guys can see what we're after, like how it works and all that sort of thing, okay? Now this effect is exactly the same as what we use to do like colour variation and streaking and stuff like that. Rain streaks, dust streaks, stuff like that, but we use obviously different colours, okay? Things like this, like the AK Interactive. This is an Africa dust one, but again you can use oils to get the same effect. You can mix a bit of white oil with a bit of yellow and get a bit of a dusty effect. Like mix your own colours up until you get the consistency and the colours that you want. Now the trick is, when you're actually doing this brushing down effect, is to make sure your brush is nice and soft. If you've got anything too stiff, it's going to drag down too hard, okay? And if you keep brushing, I'll just keep brushing here now just to show you what happens. If you keep brushing, what it's going to do is actually start destroying that effect. It'll start making it look really, really streaky and so on. I'll dip the brush back in some white spirit again just to show you. Now if you keep dipping in a white spirit, what it actually does is it'll pretty much just make that effect look really, really light, okay? It'll take all that colour and just wash it right away, Okay, blow on that. So you can see that's a really light effect, but to me that's sort of ruined the effect. So you can overdo the brushing. Now when you do the coloured streak effects, you can go up and down the whole side of the tank, and what that does, it blends everything together. Now this is obviously rust, you wouldn't normally do it with the rusty area, but you'll do it with these things here, like your streaking effects. But anyway guys, I'll leave that for another part of the video, and we'll do some streaking effects on here. Like I say, it's the same sort of technique, but just a little bit different because you're brushing up and down the whole tank. Okay, and so we're back, and this time we're going to do some streaking effects where it's sort of like the rust effects we've done on the back here, but this one here is more to get some like dust streaking and things like that, or rain effects, rain streaking, or just to sort of do colour variation on these like single tones, and even camouflage, it'll have the same effect. It'll do some nice sort of colour variation for you. And it's the same thing as the streaking. I've got two different colours here. Got one here, it's a African dust one, and the other one here is a just dust effects from AK. Okay, so I'm going to use the African one first. Just dip my brush in, and it's just put some dabs across the top here. Okay, like so. Okay, and drag them down a little bit. Set that down there. Okay, and do some from the bottom as well. Don't worry about sort of putting too much on there guys, it sort of disappears once you start doing the actual like painting part of it. Now shake these things well, because they are like a powdered base type of thing, and like a lot of the pigment will settle to the bottom of them. Okay, now I'm going to change colours. I'm going to go to the other guy. Okay, same thing, just put a few streaks in there. Now the idea of using a couple of different colours is, say you haven't got just the one colour to get the variation. If you've got a few different colours, it'll give you a bit more variation. Okay, now it's fairly rough looking there at the moment, so we've got to let that dry completely. Then I'll come back with that brush soaked in the white spirit, and we'll do a bit of dragging up and down. It'll show you what that streaking effect comes up like. Okay, and so we're back, and our paint is dried now. Well, it's not really paint, it's a streaking solution. I'm not sure. I think it's like weathering powders mixed with like a white spirit type of base, but yeah, whatever you want to call it, that's just in the details. So this is fairly well dried now. We can, you know, do this and it doesn't actually affect it. So all I'm going to do, the same we've done with the streaking effects with the rust, dip it in the white spirit, take off the excess on a tissue here, and we're just going to, this time though, just instead of just one direction, we're going to go up and down. Okay, in two directions, up and down, up and down, up and down, like so. Okay, take off the excess again, give the brush another dip in the white spirit. Now this is all like touch and feel stuff guys. It's stuff that as you do it, you'll get your own technique and your own sort of feel for the look you're looking for, you know, what you're after, as to how much white spirit you want to put in there. Okay, now that's fairly moist there at the moment. I'm blowing a little bit and just get it to dry off. I'll give you a bit of an idea of what happens with the streaking effect. Okay, now this is fairly bright because I've used bright colours, and it's just so it shows up on the camera. I'll go over one more time, dull it down a little bit more. Okay, now the thing is with this effect, if you keep going over it, it ends up being just one single like colour rather than like a couple of different colours streaking in there. It just ends up being one single effect. Okay, so hopefully you can see on there. It's still a little bit wet, so it's a bit hard to see, I guess, but it gives you an idea of the streaking that we're talking about. Okay, get that camera to focus. Alright, now like I say, I've left it fairly bright so that you can see what we're talking about. Now if you go online and have a look around, have a look at some of my work, have a look at some other people's work as well, you'll actually see what this effect does. Probably one of the best ones to look at is some of Meg's stuff that he's done, and it's, you know, it shows you exactly what this effect can achieve. So that's, I've lightened it down a little bit more there now, and you can get a bit of an idea. It's almost dry, a little bit, couple of little wet patches in there. This camera, sorry guys, just keeps dropping it out of focus, but that gives you the idea of what the streaking effect does. Okay, and it's also good for colour variation. You can put in, especially if you're using oils, you know, you can put in a few different colours, or a couple of dark, a couple of lighter, brush it up and down. They blend in nice and well as you're going up and down with the brush, and it gives a really nice effect. Okay, but like I say, just look online, look at some of my work, look at some of Meg's work, look at whatever, and look for that effect with that nice streaking sort of look on the side of their armour, and that's how they're achieving it. Okay, if not exactly that technique, but something very similar. It'll be oils, or it'll be one of these streaking effect products from AK or MO or whatever. But yeah, it's a great effect for armour, guys, especially if it's been out, had a fair bit of use, a lot of dust and stuff on it, and bit of rain, bit of dew, things like that, and that's what will happen. Okay, so anyway guys, it breaks up your armour. Armour can look very dull if you just, you know, base coat it and put it into pin wash and do a bit of dry brushing and stuff like that, and just looks too dull. Okay, this sort of thing, these are the sort of effects that can really break up. Now obviously this is just to show you these techniques. You normally wouldn't have rust effects here and then streaking effects there and have them completely separate. You'd blend the two together. Okay, and obviously with the two blended together, looks really, really nice. But anyway guys, that's the video on how to get streaking effects in it, and if you have any questions, put them in the comments below. If there's anything that any part of the technique I haven't explained well enough, I'll definitely do another video and show you, you know, if I haven't explained something properly. But anyway guys, hope you really enjoyed this, and I'll see you. Welcome back modelers, and this time what we're going to be doing is some mud splattering effects. Okay, there's a few different ways to achieve this, and one of the ones, the main one that I use, okay, we have a bit of water in this dish here and some weathering powders in that one there, and what you've got to do is just mix them up, sort of thing. So I'll put these in the back dish, a little bit of water over there, a little bit of weathering powders, okay, a little bit more weathering powder. So it's a fairly sort of sticky, muddy sort of consistency. Okay, now one of the ways you can do this, just forgive that noise in the background, that's my compressor. Now you can use your finger with a stiff brush and just spray it like so. Okay, just with your finger. Okay, now obviously this effect has to be done in a certain direction and things like that, like spray it upwards or up the back or up over the nose. I've just done it roughly straight side on because that way you can actually see what's going on. What I might do is I'll just hold that tank up there on that, and I'll do it again. I'll get a little bit more mud on here this time. Okay, so we'll spray upwards like so. Okay, so it gets all nice up in there on the road wheels and things like that. Now when that dries, it'll be much more subtle than what it looks there, because obviously that's wet and shiny. Now the other way to do it is to get your brush in there nice and thick. Okay, now to do this effect you do have to have your brush really loaded and nice and thick. Now like I was saying, the noise in the background was my airbrush. It's fully loaded up now. So all I'm going to do is hold the brush where I want it, bring my airbrush up here and just blow it through like so, through the bristles. And the idea of doing this effect is it gives a really nice random sort of pattern. Okay, and again, because that's fairly wet there, it looks really, really severe, but once that dries down, it's a really, really nice effect, guys. Okay, and it dulls down all the other effects you put over it. Put a few mud splatters up the side, then put a bit of dust up there or whatever. If it's still wet, obviously you want a nice wet muddy look, but if it's something that's been through mud and now it's dry, put a nice dust coat of buff or something over the top of that, and it actually looks really, really nice. Okay, now with Armour, because it does do a lot of off-road work, it does go through quite a bit of mud and puddles and things like that. And with Armour, it only takes a puddle, to one splash and it'll throw something up the side at least, okay? So even modern armour, this is one of those effects you can put on modern armour to try and weather it a little bit, because a lot of modern armour, you know, goes out on an exercise, gets a little bit grubby, they come back, they clean it off. It's very hard to find modern armour that's really weathered up. Okay, this is one of those effects, if it's been on an exercise even for a few hours, it is going to have a few mud splatters, a bit of dust and stuff like that. So it's one of those nice effects you can use on modern armour. Okay guys, so I'll turn the camera off, I'll let this dry completely, I'll come back and I'll show you what sort of spray effect that is left on that tank. Okay, so our mud sprays are now dry, and I'll try and get this up with the camera a little bit for you, get it to focus so you can see the effect. Now what I've done is, the other side was the one I've done the demo on, but because it's that colour, that dark German colour, dark sand or whatever it is, dark yellow I think it is, it doesn't show up very well. But so what I've done, I sprayed it up this side just so for the video it can show up a lot better for you. Now I've done both here. This end here I've done with the spray gun, this end here I've done just with the flicking off the end of the brush. You can use a toothbrush or a stiff paintbrush or whatever, but that just shows that spray effect. Okay, now when you go over the light dusting coat over the bottom part of this looks really good, this effect. And on armour, I mean, what you've got to do with all these techniques is picture what the finished product is going to look like, what you want it to be, like something that's been on exercises for a short time, something that's been out running through mud and dust and stuff like that, so you have a different effect. But all these techniques will add up to whatever effect you want to have to finish with. You can combine all these techniques and end up with the finish that you want. So that's just another little one to add to your toolbox of techniques. It's to spray it on mud. Okay, now I've overdone it on this obviously, just so you can see the effect. You just put less on the brush and flick it up just lightly so it'll just spray up a little bit on the side here. I sprayed it right up there just so you can see that effect and what it looks like. Okay guys, so that's the last one in the weathering techniques that I have at the moment. I'm going to put some more up a little bit later on. There is a few more techniques that I want to go through, like rusting and things like that, damage and, you know, like damaged armour and stuff like that I want to put up, burnt out armour and things like that. But they're going to take a little bit more time to do, and I'll put those up later on. But hopefully you got something out of these videos. And please leave some comments below if you like it, if you don't like it, if there's any techniques that you use that are better than this, or you think they're as good as this, please leave them in the comments, and I'll definitely try and make videos and try and keep up with you guys. Okay modelers, so this part of the video is just going to be show you how to get some dust effects. Now obviously that spray effect, the mud spray effect, is not dry completely yet, but I'll just show you over the top of this, so when it all dries completely, it'll show you the complete effect. Now all I've done is mix up some Tamiya, this guy here, the buff, Tamiya buff paint, okay, with a bit of water, just to thin it down nice and well, and have your airbrush set so it's only spraying a little bit of paint. Okay, now all you want to do is just nice little light dabs, like so. Okay, just nice and light up the sides, just around the bottom sort of thing, heavier down here on the road wheels, and just a couple of streaks like so up the side. Okay, now when that's completely dry, I'll be able to show you that effect. Now on this other piece of armour I've got over here, try to get up here and get the camera to focus hopefully. Okay, now this one here is completely unpainted, so all I'm going to do is just show you the dust effects just with buff, Tamiya buff paint. Okay, so have it a bit heavier on the road wheels, okay, and then just lay back off, like bring the brush further away, just to put a nice layering of dust over the rest of it. And what that does is blends it in nice. Okay, nice and heavy on the road wheels. Now it doesn't have to be Tamiya buff, it can be whatever paint that, you know, whatever colour you feel is going to suit the environment this tank is meant to be in. I may have a bit too much light on here for you to see this properly, but I'll try and get it up a bit closer, okay? That way it takes a bit of light out, okay? Hopefully you can see that where it's got that nice sort of dusty effect on the road wheels. Now you can do this a lot heavier than what I've done it if it's been running on dusty roads and things like that, and mix whatever colours you need to with it. Now what I want to say at this point too is the difference between oils, pastels and weathering solutions and weathering powders. I mean, they're all techniques that can all be used in conjunction with each other, or if you've only got the money to afford a packet of pastels, they're fine. They're just as good as weathering powders you can find. The same with buying the streaking effect packs and things like that from OK. They are fairly expensive. They do last forever, but you can get the same effect with a couple of oils. Okay, just buy a cheap packet of oil colours. You can mix your colours up, and they will have the same effect. Okay, so these are all techniques that you can blend in and out with each other. They all mix in fairly well together. And like I say, you don't need a lot of money to buy these things. With my rusting packs up the back here, like I say, I bought one of those, and I bought that quite a while ago. It was fairly expensive, but I know I'm going to be able to use that for quite a while. You don't have to buy a pack like that. You can mix your own colours. Okay, it's fine. They have the same sort of effect as anything else. But hopefully these videos, guys, have showed you some of the main techniques I use for weathering armour, and hopefully it'll help you guys to weather as well. The only thing I haven't shown so far is using your weathering powders and pastels. I'll do a different videos on those. You can do like nice thick mud effects and things like that with those. You can do dusting effects with those. That's a whole sort of section on its own. You don't have to have weathering powders. You can do it all with what I've shown you here today. You don't have to have weathering powders to do it. Okay, even that spray effect, that sprayed mud effect, you can do that with oils. Okay, so anyway, guys, I'll leave it there. I'll put up that pastel video, the pastels versus weathering powders video, which I'm sort of going through at the moment, working out what I want to say in that and what I want to show you guys. But when that comes, that'll be a new video, and I'll put it online. Hopefully it should be in the next week or so. Anyway, guys, I hope you got a bit out of this, and I will see you in the next video.